out of all of the sections had the most signups. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I hit record, but I am Dr. Kimberly Mays, licensed clinical social worker, assistant professor here at Florida Gulf Coast University. Thank you all for joining us. We are going to be having our guest, Dr. Jasmine Young. She's a licensed clinical social worker, and Mr. Warren Clark at University of Michigan, who will be heading up the topic today on sports social work. And so I'm really excited about this topic because NILs, all of the other things are very big right now. And so in terms of support with students, student athletes, and even athletes that are post-graduation, how we can be of support is a really great topic. Just so that we know what's going on, I am in Fort Myers, Florida, on campus at Florida Gulf Coast University. And we have our Master of Social Work students who will be graduating this semester. This is their advanced practice seminar course. Say hello, everyone. Hello. I'm sorry that you cannot see them. Of course, the camera is set up to be on the instructor, but they are here. And then in the chat, we have individuals who are currently social workers, who are looking to be social workers, who are looking to get into sports social work, and aspiring social workers. And so we will have a presentation by Dr. Coleman Young and Mr. Warren Clark. And of course, if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat. And so it's going to. All right, Dr. Coleman Young and Mr. Clark.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here with you all today. Of course, technology is on our side. Everything is working. So fingers crossed it stays that way. Just a little disclaimer. I'm in Savannah, Georgia. So we're getting a little bit of bad weather, but nothing that we haven't seen. But I'm just giving you that disclaimer in case things get a little shaky, but we'll pick back up and keep going. As Dr. Mays mentioned, I am Dr. Cohen Young, and joining me today is Mr. Warren Clark, all the way from the University of Michigan, and we are excited to be here, and we'll start us off. There we go.
There we go. Hello, everybody. I'm Warren Clark, and I'm extremely excited to be here. And just it's an honor to be able to meet with you and talk about sports social work. I'm going to I'll introduce myself a little bit more in my background in just a couple of minutes. But right now, we wanted to go over the playbook and the agenda for our next hour and a half. And we're going to have welcome and introductions and talk a little bit about our career journeys, which intersect with our passion for sports social work. Current work focus, we're going to talk about that and what is sports social work. We're going to talk about current and emerging trends that we see in the field, the interdisciplinary connections that this field can make in social work, and particularly for us, sports social work. We're going to have some career tips and advice, and then we're inclusive in our teaching. And what that means is we're relying on you to ask the questions that everyone else probably has too. So in that way, we're all included in teaching each other. You're asking the questions, and that will guide us also to make sure that, well, I mean, Jasmine and I, we've talked, and we could sit here and talk about sports social work for a week. And we've done a lot of that already, but we want to make sure that as we present some of the information, we also are responsive to what is important to you all and your questions. So please, we are counting on you to ask us any questions that you might have about sports social work.
All right. So let's get started. So welcome everyone again. I am going to start off with my journey, a little bit about me, what it is that I do. all the hats that I wear. So a little bit about me, I'm a mom. I have two little ones. They are 3 and 4, and they rule my world. I'm also a wife. My husband's active duty, so with that, I get to travel a lot, sometimes against my will, but I learned to love it. I'm a formal Division II athlete. I played basketball at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. That was a great 4 years for me there. In that I did get to experience some post-tournament play. So we made it to the Final Four my sophomore year, and we had a lot of regional runs, and we were pretty strong in our conference, right? Not to brag, but go Tars. And then also an active duty spouse. So with that, that affords me, a lot of time and space and opportunity to meet a lot of people. So just an overview of all of my roles and everything that I do. I am a clinician for the Army. I do crisis assessments for Fort Riley, which is in Kansas, prior to living in Savannah. I did live in Kansas for about 6 years. I am also a clinical supervisor for anyone that is looking to become a license, that is looking to obtain their clinical license. I do provide supervision for social workers, also other helping professionals, but I do reserve space for social workers, particularly because there's a lot of benefit in receiving supervision directly from a social worker as opposed to another helping professional. And I realize that just because of our practice standards and our core values, and definitely they differ from other helping professionals. So I get that, and I do hold space for specific social workers. I am also an instructor at the University of Kentucky. I specifically teach in their doctoral program. I I teach what we call colloquium. It's colloquium 1 and 2. I am assisting other social workers obtain their doctorate degree. So I'm primarily focused on research at the University of Kentucky, and then specifically within the clinical track there, just because a lot of my background does stem in clinical social work. And then last but not least, the hat that I wear that everyone's most interested in today probably is I'm a sports social worker. So I am the founder of a nonprofit called Minds Matter Incorporated. With that foundation, I provide sports, well, I'll say performance therapy, and then just also mental health therapy to athletes. Within that, I specifically look at and work with athletes that have chronic health conditions. And what that means is if you look at the athletes that I serve, they primarily may have asthma, sickle cell, Crohn's. Some of them may be recovering from injury, but that's the space in which I foster my nonprofit within. I also, with this nonprofit, I attach myself to a lot of camps and different travel sports teams, and I provide just counseling, therapy services to the team itself. But all of that is what is grant funded, right? So if we are looking to put on a program, we find grants, we try to build a total program around grant funding, and then we provide the services to athletes. Another focus of the nonprofit is marginalized youth, right? So athletes of color or athletes who otherwise would not have access to this type of support. So that is Minds Matter in a nutshell. But I want to just go a little bit further and show you all my just career trajectory and what it took to kind of get to where I'm at.
You're gonna cough right now.
Uh-oh.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. So this is my career journey. As you see, it is not very linear, right? It didn't go from point A to point B to point C, although it may look like that, but there are some pauses in here. I'm saying that because I'm going to share my journey, right? And then Mr. Warren is going to share his as well. And there are many ways to get to the end result of being a sports social worker, but we are here today to show you all what it is that we have done. So that way, maybe you be inspired or you follow the same path, and then, you know, you can ultimately find yourself within the sports social work realm. So as I previously mentioned, I got my bachelor's degree from Rollins College. My bachelor's is in psychology. At that time, I didn't know too much about the field of social work, but I had a very inspiring professor there, Dr. Queen, and she actually introduced me to the field of social work. So from there, I was like, yes, this is for me. I want to help people. I can do this, right? So I went on and I attended the University of Central Florida, right there, right up the road in Orlando, Florida. While I was there, I guess I did some good work there. I was working for the Department of Children and Families, and then I also worked at it was a part of my internship, but it was called the Tree of Life. And at the Tree of Life, we primarily worked with veterans who were homeless, and we were working to help them find stable housing, get them connected with the VA, all the VA services, because they do offer a lot. And then also just making sure that they can maintain their mental health. And the end goal was for them to have their own housing, right? Be sustainable adults in their own housing. So I guess I did that pretty well. So that afforded me Clinical Student of the Year while in my master's program. We had a lot of success within that organization at the Tree of Life. So I will never claim all of the kudos for that because I had a superior team behind me. So that was 2017. And then 2024, here recently, I just graduated with my doctorate degree. So I obtained that from the University of Kentucky. Again, with that, my concentration was clinical. My research focus, though, and this is what sparked me into sports social work outside of my nonprofit, but my research focus was particularly looking at college athletes. So I was looking at the efficacy and the appropriateness, right, of use of assessments with collegiate athletes. So I can share with you all some research, and I'll give it to Dr. Mays if she would like to disseminate it at a later date. It is a lengthy read, but you can kind of see my impact and what I was doing with my research and the things that I'm still doing with it. So I'll be sure to share that with you all. Some additional key milestones within this space, right? You don't necessarily have to be clinically licensed to be a sports social worker. It just depends on the capacity in which you wish to work with athletes. So in 2022 is when I obtained my clinical license in Georgia. And then in 2021, I obtained the clinical license in Kansas. So in Georgia, it's the licensed clinical social worker. In Kansas, you have the licensed specialized clinical social worker. Also in 2021, I became a member of the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. It's abbreviated as ASWIS. So you may hear myself or Mr. Warren, we might say ASWIS, and we are referring to that alliance. So it's the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. And then also in 2021 is when I founded Minds Matter, which I told you about previously. In 2024, I had my second publication, solo publication, but this one was just a little bit more special because I was afforded an opportunity to be published in the special edition of the Sports Social Work Journal, where we were highlighting empirical research. So that's the article that I'll share with you all, so that way you can see the research that kind of propelled me into the space, if I may, from a clinical perspective. And then also I'll talk more about Minds Matter from a macro perspective when we look at macro work. So kind of hitting all the levels of social work here. Now, as I've mentioned, right, this kind of looks good. It all looks kind of in order, but there were some bumps in the road into becoming the sports social worker that I am today. So challenges that I faced, right? So when I first I thought of a brilliant idea of sports social work, I thought I found something, everyone. Like I thought this was something that I created and I was super excited as a social worker would be, right? You think that you have this amazing idea and then you go to Google and you find out like, oh, this already exists. But I was like, that's fine. Like, how can I add, what can I do to make this better? And that's when I came across the Alliance. I came across the Alliance of Social Workers in Sport. And I joined that association so that way I could make connections, right? Doing this solo, doing this alone, it got a little confusing at times. So I was sure to join this alliance and I was able to make the connections. I'm so excited that Dr. Mays actually has allowed us to come in because maybe this barrier that I faced as far as making the connections can be dismantled for you all, because it can be tricky at times trying to find connections and trying to get yourself into the field. And that's something that I struggled with too, but I found that the alliance was very helpful for me. Another barrier was accessing research related to the populations that I wanted to research, right? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of research that is focused on athletes of color. The NCAA has done a better job as far as compiling their research and making sure that they're inclusive of the populations that they're looking at. And then also just independent researchers at different institutions, they are starting to do a better job as far as looking at everyone in the research and making sure that it's inclusive when you look at the population within the methodology section. I don't know if you guys have started to really pay attention to articles and what's being published out there, but accessing research related to the population that I specifically wanted to look at. And then also just the ongoing breaking stigmas in the sports space, right? Athletes still have a hard time with mental health. They are getting better at it. Institutions are doing an amazing job with that, but I am not necessarily attached to a school, right? I am independent. I have my own organization, right? So when I am going to a school, or if I am meeting a parent, or if I'm meeting an athlete, right, there are still some stigmas that are very prevalent within athletics and within athletes that they have a hard time sometimes wanting to engage with mental health services from the perspective of, I am a social worker, I'm licensed, and that is one entity that I provide. But sometimes some reframing helps with that, and allowing them to, and motivational interviewing helps with that as well. That definitely gives them some better insight. So that's my career journey. If you have any questions, I know I didn't preface this at the beginning, please put them in the chat. Don't forget them. Please put them in the chat and then we will address them at the end. We just want to make sure that we get through all of the content because we have quite a bit to share with you all and we don't want to negate this, but we'll get to the questions for sure. So again, my current work focus, sorry, I can't talk right now, is nonprofit. So I'm in the nonprofit space. I'm looking at marginalized youth and collegiate athletes. Those are my two areas. The collegiate athletes typically come to me as referrals from their parents. Most of the time, they're like, hey, Dr. J, we have our athlete here. We want you to work with them. And when it comes to the marginalized youth, that comes mostly from me going out to the schools that are local in my area. I am letting them know the services that I provide. Also to sports teams, we have golf, we have swimming, basketball. I have a few football players, but not as much as I would want to have, but those are just some of the areas in which I touch on from the nonprofit side. So in my current role, I support athletes. I support their mental health. I support their wellness. And all of this is through different services that I provide. So whether that is crisis intervention, if I'm looking at developing programs to help sports teams, if that is collaborating with coaches or medical professionals. We'll touch on this a bit down the road in the presentation where we talk about interdisciplinary teams and how that looks different for myself and then Mr. Warren, just because of the capacities in which we operate in as far as sports social work goes. But this is essentially what I do. Now, things can look a little different depending on the seasons. It depends on the weather. I'll say that too here, because sometimes I like to meet my athletes where they're most comfortable. And sometimes where they're most comfortable is the field or the court, or, you know, if we're going to go somewhere in the community, meeting them where they are is probably the best advice that I could give you, because with athletes, sometimes they are still not so sure about engaging, right? But if you can meet them where they are, I'm sure you guys have probably heard that phrase before, but meeting them where they are, that can help. That can definitely help them as far as building rapport, and then them just settling in and working with you as far as you being their mental health therapist. Now, a day in the life of me as a sports social worker can look a little different day to day. So typically, I work with athletes and sports teams for the most part. I have files, right? I have client files. So I'll typically review client files and update any needs that the client may be having at that time. I may conduct one-on-one sessions, right? So if I have an athlete, they might have an important meet coming up, right? So they might want to meet with me prior to the meet. Also meeting with coaches and parents. I'm saying all this, but I also want to put a disclaimer that release of information for collegiate athletes is definitely a must, because you all are adults at that level. But if they are signed, that does warrant me, permission to talk with coaches and parents at the youth level. Not so much. The coaches and parents are already included, so everybody's getting updated. Any community outreach, I try to go to a lot of community events if they entail fitness, fun, youth, children. I'm there. Not only am I trying to promote sport social work, right, and allowing people to understand that we are in this space as social workers. This space is typically heavily dominated by sports psychologists, but just as any field, social workers will get in and we just kind of take over in a sense. So it's all about just spreading the word and allowing people to know that we are also here in Puebla and they can use us for these services as well. So going to community outreach events is actually my favorite. It allows me to, one, just get from behind a desk, and then I can go and engage in the community. And then, of course, what everybody doesn't like, but is also very important, documentation. So I keep my client files, but I also make sure that they are safe, right? I make sure that any protected information remains that protected, and that only the right people they have access to this information. So with all of that, right, you heard me talk about different roles previously that I hold and have held. But with that, I want to talk about some of the skills, right? So what are the key skills and knowledge that is required for a successful sports social worker? And I'm going to preface this with, it depends on the capacity in which you enter into sports social work. If you are looking to do more clinical and you're trying to provide, therapy services, then of course you're going to want to hone in on those clinical skills. If you are looking to just do more maybe policy, or if you are looking to do field work, right? You don't necessarily have to have the clinical license. I just want to put that out there. It just depends on the capacity in which you want to operate within the space. So in my space, right, we always want to make sure that we have a strong clinical insight, right? So proficiency in evidence-based therapeutic interventions, making sure that those interventions are tailored to athletes and their unique needs. When you see my research, you'll see why I started with that, because that's important. Just because there is an intervention that's around and it's being used, it does not mean that it may be appropriate for use with athletes. So you want to do your due diligence, maybe take another deep dive if you have found an intervention that you liked, and just see if it has any research with backing for athletes. And if anybody wants to know how to do that, we can do that offline another time. And then making sure that you're aware of any type of sports, I would say like sports knowledge or sports specific knowledge. So understanding like the culture of sports and the pressures and the demands of athletics. And it looks different at different levels of play, but that's important, making sure that you have that that understanding of sports culture and what it looks like. You don't have to necessarily be an athlete or have been an athlete to be a sports social worker. Sometimes I get that question, can I be a sports social worker if I've never played sports? You absolutely can. You just have to have the knowledge base and the understanding of what the athletes or sorry, my computer, what the culture looks like, what athletics culture looks like, and what athletes may be dealing with. And Dr. Mays made mention of one of the biggest things that are happening right now with NIL. That is a really big part of college athletics right now. But every level of play is going to have its own distinguished pressures and its own distinguished culture. So that's important to understand. And then also performance anxiety, any type of transitions. Athletes may transition out of sport due to injuries. They might transition out of sport due to conclusion of, being a student at the collegiate level. Athletes may transition out of sport just because they find that they probably don't want to be an athlete anymore, right? But being able to help them during those transitions. Another key component, I would say, is the ability to foster trust and rapport with athletes. Like I mentioned previously, sometimes you'll get an athlete and they are still just not sure. They have a lot of ambivalence, right? They're not sure if they want to engage. But being able to build up your skill set to build rapport and being able to articulate what it is that you would be doing for the athlete, that would be very important. Also, when it comes to stakeholders and coaches and athletes, when you're trying to sell yourself, right? Typically, I'm in that space where I'm having to come to different sports teams and parents and coaches, and I'm speaking to what it is that I do, right? So not only being able to build rapport with the client themselves, but also the important decision makers that would ultimately say yes or no to you working with their athlete. And then just showing that you're a safe and supportive space for them, that definitely goes a long way. Communication skills, being clear and empathetic in your communication, both verbally and written. I do a lot of communication via email. So you want to be mindful of what you're sending, right? So that way there is no misconstrued of the tone or the voice that you may have. Sometimes it happens, but you want to be very mindful of that. You want to be able to convey any complex ideas, be able to facilitate collaboration with other members of the interdisciplinary team, right? All of that goes into communication skills. Networking, this is very, very key. This is how I ended up here in front of you all. I was able to network with Dr. Mays, and through that opportunity comes more opportunities. So building connections within professional organizations, within professional social media platforms, right? I use LinkedIn a lot. You all can find me on LinkedIn about every single day. And then also within AsWiz, as I mentioned, that's how I made a lot of significant connections. That's how I actually got connected with Mr. Warren. So all of this, the networking, the advocacy too, being able to advocate, especially if people want to go into policy and you're looking to get into sports social work, there is so much going on as far as the LGBTQ plus and transgender population, and being able to, articulate for and advocate for this population as far as safe play and being able to participate in sport. All of that is important. Another big portion of this is cultural competency. So many people play sport. You look, and there's so much diversity within sport. You want to be as culturally competent and as culturally sensitive as possible, whether that means going and doing the research yourself, if that means going back to any classes or coursework that you've taken. You want to be as culturally sound as possible. This is towards those that are looking to do any type of nonprofit work or any program work. Being able to develop programs is a plus, right? Although I have my nonprofit organization, within that, I do offer different programs, different services. So being able to develop programs does help you, and it goes a very long way. And then, of course, adaptability, resilience. I'm just trying to think. If you're wanting to go into teaching, it does help. I am going to be hosting my first cohort at the doctoral level of sports social workers at the University of Kentucky. So if you want to teach, right, you want to make sure that you have the sufficient skill set, and you'll be able to teach others and bring them on board and inform them about the practice and the art of sports social work. It's a science and art. If you've heard me speak before anywhere else, I always talk about the art and the science of social work. And that's why we're called upon so much, because we do a great job with that balance. But there's also a very beautiful art and science of sports social work too. And this isn't something that you just want to say, oh yes, I do it. There is some science behind it. You want to make sure that you're adequately trained and that you do have the appropriate level of insights to call yourself a sports social worker. Mr. Warren, I see your hand. Oh, you're on mute.
I'd just like to add in the skills, and probably under communication and its cultural competency, it's the networking. In social work, we talk a lot about, especially in community organizing and the other macro areas, about how to enter a community. And so that's kind of a general social work thing about the do's and don'ts. And there's a whole science, there's research, it's evidence-based on how do you respectfully enter a community. And I would say that in sports social work, whether you're again at a CO level, or if you're talking to coaches, I had a football player in my sports social work class one time say, if you come down to Texas on Friday Night Lights, where I went to high school, and you're talking about all this strength-based stuff, they're going to run you out of town. So you'll have to really be cognizant, especially in an area like this that is not traditionally a sport welcoming or involved with social workers. I would encourage you to really study, practice, and learn about respectfully, how do you enter communities.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Mr. Warren, because that is very important. That is absolutely important. All right. So that is where I lay in sports social work. So we're going to transition, and Mr. Warren is going to let you all into his world, and he's going to talk about what it is that he does in sports social work.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen-Young. And hello again, everybody. And as you can see, I'm from the University of Michigan School of Social Work. And just a little bit about my background. I have a 24-year-old son that I'm very proud of, who lives in Marietta, Georgia. Um, and I graduated from University of Michigan in 1973 with a bachelor's degree in political science. I worked for 5 years. My interest was in children and youth. And so I worked in a wilderness therapeutic program. So very experiential kinds of things, which I think a lot of sports social work is. It's about experiential kinds of things where their athletes are doing, and you're in a milieu. And so I worked in that for about 5 years and went back to the University of Michigan to get my get my MSW in 1980 at U of M. And I worked then as a medical social worker, 5 years at the VA hospital when it was in a suburb of Detroit, and it's downtown now. And then I worked in my local community hospital in physical medicine and rehabilitation um, for 10 years. That training in and of itself, it had nothing to do with sports. Had I had someone coming and co-talking to me when I was in undergraduate school about the possibilities in social work and sports, boy, my career path would have been a little different. Not that it hasn't been good, but having this kind of information and seeing those connections is critically important. I transitioned into higher education and got a position at the University of Michigan School of Social Work in field education in 1997. I worked in that position for 19 years and semi-retired in 2015. And I've been working as a part of the application review team for about the last 10 years. In 2011, I was coaching baseball, and I was my son, and I was this person who was going to have my kid fulfill those dreams that I didn't get to fulfill because I was traumatized out of sports for various reasons before I ever hit my potential. And so that's important because we'll talk about trauma-informed care in a slide or two as well, and working with athletes. And so we had a strong cohort of students in the program in 2011. And so those folks, my coaching, and I trained with the Michigan baseball coach in his coaching clinic and the light bulb started going off in terms of how to be a strength-based coach and not be this coach that is trying to fulfill their own dreams through their kids. So I was guilty, but I was also trainable, and my eyes opened along with our students and my colleague. We started to develop sports social work at the University of Michigan, and that included internships through our position in the field office. It included teaching what we call a mini course. We had a lot of student athletes take our course because they were, of course, interested in sports and sports social work. And so it grew and grew and grew. Our students put on the first full day sports social work conference in about 2012. And I think it was the first one in the country. I'm not sure. But so there's a rich tradition that we said. We've published an article about our experience in developing that. I joined the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports along the way. Some of our graduate students were some of the founders of that and are still there. I can't say enough about that organization. If you are at a point where you're graduating or from either your master's or your bachelor's degree, join that organization. We'll be meeting for the 11th annual symposium down in New Orleans September 30th and October 1st. And so come down there. You'll meet people, you'll network. It's a great repository of jobs. When you're in the listserv, we're getting jobs posted all the time. So it's a great source of meeting people and possibly leading you to a sports related job. Um, so my work these days is mostly again in higher education. I talk to prospective students. I'm working with the Alliance of sports social workers quite a bit. We actually 2 years ago we wrote a fairly comprehensive field education manual for schools, agencies, and students on the sort of the how-tos. It's very detailed about how to go about developing sports social work in an educational setting, so that that's my focus now, is training, making available the trainings for folks that want to go into sports social work. And so that's kind of where I am in my career now. I've really switched that focus to education along those lines, and I love doing it. I mean, I'm retired, but with sports social work coming along, I just can't quite stop, and I have other interests, mind you, but this has been such a career changing and just uh, really given me guidance and a purpose for retirement. My love that I do now is that you can see I love photography, and I'm a landscape photographer, but I volunteer at a program called the Miracle League of Plymouth, which is our area. There are 300 of these organizations around the country, including Canada and Mexico. Hopefully they'll still, have us. But I'm a roving on-field photographer. So every game we have adaptive baseball fields, and so the season starts in 2 weeks. So I'm going around the field along with another person, and we're taking pictures of the kids. These are for it's adaptive baseball for kids, and the adaptive field, and it's one of the most fun jobs. It combines my social work skills, my photography love, and working with kids. And so that's kind of where I'm at these days. Okay. So when I said I teach mini courses and teach some about sports social work, and colleagues and one of my colleagues brought this quote from Nelson Mandela, and I hope everybody knows Nelson Mandela, but this is such a powerful one of his quotes from what I consider to be one of the greatest social justice warriors of all times, in what he did. So if you're not as familiar, read his book, read his story. There's an exhibit that travels around on Nelson Mandela, but he said sport has the power to change the world, has the power to inspire, it has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to the youth in a language that they understand, creates hope where there was once only despair. It's more powerful than government in breaking down racial barriers, and it laughs in the face of all types of discrimination. I love this quote. It says it all within this. We could have a class just based on this. So that's kind of the inspiration for me, and I think a lot of people, in terms of sports social work.
Awesome. So I'm just going to piggyback off of that and give you some more context as to what is sports social work. So sports social work is a specialized field within the social work profession that focuses on addressing the unique needs and challenges of athletes and individuals involved in sport. So sports social workers operate at the intersection of athletics, and then as well as well-being, right? So we're not only just focused on the athlete's performance, right? We're not just looking at sports performance only, but we are looking at the totality of the athlete. So we're looking at their well-being. We're looking at the athlete and their environment, right? I'll just give you a brief example. We have athlete A. Athlete A has come from a family. Their family might not be doing well, right? But we want athlete A to focus on sport and school, right? But if athlete A's family isn't doing well, how can they focus on school and sport? We're just going to work on the sports performance? I think not. We need to focus on athlete A as a whole and determine how can we best support that athlete, whether that is looking at their family dynamics, if that is looking at things that they may need to perform, right? If that's looking at from a nutritional aspect, a physical health, mental health, right? We're looking at the totality of the athlete so that way they can perform well. If we negate the rest, right, we negate the environment, the systems, all the different layers that make up this athlete, then we're doing them a disservice. So that is the beauty of what it is that we do in sports social work. And we do it from different levels, right? Not everybody's working with professional athletes. That is not my wheelhouse. I get a lot of questions about professional athletics, but I do have a lot of colleagues who work in that space. So if that's something that you are interested in, we can definitely chat about it, but that's just not what myself or Mr. Warren does, if I may. So I just want you all to understand what it is exactly that sports social workers do and understand that you can do this from different angles, right? You don't necessarily have to have an athlete in front of your face to be impactful as a sports social worker. I know a lot of professional sports teams are hiring social workers to help them with their community engagement. So you wouldn't necessarily be working directly. Well, you might have some engagement with the athletes if they bring their athletes on in their community engagement portions, but just understand that there are different roles in which social workers can work in athletics, even as far as helping coaches develop like crisis management plans. I know for myself, I've been tasked with that before, helping when there is a crisis for an athlete, because that can be kind of complex as well. But us as sports social workers, we do a lot. There's a lot that we can do. It really just depends on what it is you want to do in the space. And if that's not already being done, you can make the space and do it. Or if it's already being done, figuring out how you can enter into what's being done. All right, so next up, we will be chatting about what's new in the field. What are some things that are happening in the field? So as far as the trends go, there's been a dramatic, well, not dramatic, a drastic, let's say drastic uptake and increase of awareness as it pertains to athletes' mental health. So a lot of sports teams, a lot of college teams, a lot of schools in general, right? They are understanding the importance of attending to their athletes' mental health and how it impacts not only them in their sports performance, but them performing as a student as well. There's been a substantial expansion of sports social work as a subfield within social work. This is probably my fourth talk this year, right? Just talking about sports social work and how social workers can get involved. So that just lets me know that schools are talking about it. They're educating their students about the field. Now, Mr. Warren, he brought this up previously, right? But there is a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Those are like no words right now, but I'm using them. We have to be mindful of who's involved in sport, right? And making sure that we are servicing them appropriately, servicing everyone appropriately, and making sure that not only from an athletics perspective of the athlete receiving services, but then also making sure that we have clinicians on the other side who are diverse, right? Who understand what it means to be an athlete, making sure that everyone has access to sports social work, if I may, making sure that everyone is aware of what sports social work is, and there's no explicit exclusion of anyone from sports social work. Yes, Mr. Warren. Oh, I'll mute.
I wanted to add to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I started and I became a more enlightened coach, I developed my whole practices and I ran the whole team around diversity, teaching kids how to get along with other people. I coach youth sports, how to get along with other people who are different from them. And I worked that into the drills. I worked that into my talking with them. Equity, everybody gets to play. Everybody gets an equal chance to play the positions and do what they want to do. And inclusion, included, everybody got to be included. There was no more putting somebody out in right field, just forgetting about them. The players were empowered and they were included in forming team goals. And in our meetings, I had people got a chance, the kids got a chance to be leaders. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion, I embedded it in everything I did as a coach.
Yes, and that's important, even down to the I have some friends who they're so involved in the Special Olympics that happens. That's a great way if you are looking for just how to get involved somewhere, right? If you want to attach yourself to any organizations that are currently doing work, look at when the Special Olympics is taking place and see if you can volunteer, if they have anything local near you, or if you're willing to travel, go and take part into the Special Olympics. You'll get to see, you'll get to see a lot of talent, right? And how it is made possible for individuals to participate in sport, and how we make sure that we have the tools or the skill set, whatever they may need to continue to participate in sport. It's really a sight to see. And then also, there's a huge transition, a huge emphasis, right, on transition support. So I remember when I was done playing basketball at the collegiate level, and my coach gave me a hug, and he was like, and go over to the career center and they'll be able to help you. And they did, right? They were more help than probably I needed at that time, but they were there, they were supportive. But after that, it was just kind of, that was it, right? I wish I had someone to talk to. I wish I had someone to process the end of my collegiate play with. I had been playing basketball since middle school, so that was like an identity, right, that I had carried. And it was the identity that I was losing, right? There was some grief there. There was a lot of components that I probably needed to process with someone. I got through it, but would it have helped to have someone? Absolutely. And schools are realizing that. They're understanding the importance of transition support. And sometimes athletes transition out of sport due to injury, due to other unforeseen circumstances, right? So having that support is definitely key. Especially at the collegiate level. There's a lot going on in the collegiate space right now. So to exit out or transition out of the collegiate space can be tough for some athletes. So I do appreciate that this is a trend and that it is happening in real time. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Mr. Warren, you want to take the other ones?
Sure, thank you. Collaboration with interdisciplinary teams. I'll give a couple examples. We work with two colleagues at the University of Alabama in their athletic department. And one of them, Kiana Winston, her main job is working with a trainer. And so their efforts are collaborative, and it's that thing where if somebody gets injured, they go see the trainer. Well, guess what they start doing? They start talking to them about their emotional reaction to whatever it is that brought them. And so the social worker and the trainer. If you're in a school system, if you're going to be a school social worker, I think that's a great spot for a sports social worker. You're going to collaborate with maybe the superintendent of your district, the principal, the teachers, the coaches. And again, we are in a host setting in a lot of these areas where you might work, especially a school. And so knowing how to practicing and learning all the skills that are involved in terms of knowing how to collaborate and enter a community. I can't emphasize that enough. Um, Gambling has been more and more and more available to everyone, including student athletes. And I don't know a lot of details or specifics about the research of that and the prevalence of it, but I know that it is something that we should be concerned about, especially in the older groups of student athletes and in college and the professional levels. There's a lot of trouble to be had in getting into that. And then I talked before about the inclusion of trauma-informed care. Maybe you've studied about the adverse childhood um, experiences, or ACEs as we call them. Um, a lot of student athletes have been traumatized through their home life, through sports, so there's tons of evidence-based research on how to treat and set up treatment programs for that address from a trauma-informed lens. And again, a lot of your behavioral kinds of CBT, DBT, a lot mindfulness. There's so many different techniques that you've learned about in social work that you're going to apply into sports. And as Dr. Cohen-Young said, you don't have to have, that's the point of this, is that all your social work knowledge and skills are translated, they translate and transfer into sports. So you can use all these, even if you don't have a sports field placement, even if you don't have a sports curriculum at your school. You take these mental health courses that will be able to be useful to you as a sports social worker. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that was it
Oh,
for
okay.
that one. Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so we'll jump into some of the emerging trends that are happening in sport social work. And then from there, we'll transition over to some interesting technology integrations that are happening. Mr. One, if you want to take the first.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we've talked about holistic athlete well-being, and I guess I'll combine that with, we're thinking about not just the person as a sports performer, we're thinking about them as a person in their environment, right? Human behavior, the social environment. It's why I think social work is the ideal profession to go into as a sports social worker, because it is part and parcel of what we do in social work, right? We're wraparound, we are holistic practitioners. And so when you start applying this to sports, it's a perfect fit. Dr. Cohen-Young talked about the NIL. There are all kinds of, and transfer portal, and especially in college, there are all kinds of unique pressures and that have come about for student athletes. So in the trend and being holistic, now we think about gambling, we think about financial social work, which is another emerging field. And in these areas that we have to adjust our assessments and be more inclusive of what kinds of things that we add into our holistic treatment. Athlete-led advocacy. We have a program at the University of Michigan through the Depression Center, part of Michigan Medicine, Athletes Connected. And so this is a space that's primarily run by student athletes and former athletes to do a lot of the outreach that Dr. Cohen-Young was talking about. We also have, I don't know how active it is, we had Wolverines Against Racism. So this is a student-led group to work in collaboration with the university as well as outside groups to address racism in our society. And I'm talking about cuts. So there's opportunities for all kinds of groups like that, even in younger in high school. Students can organize, and you can empower them to organize various kinds of social and community outreach projects and programs that can address a lot of the issues in our society, including poverty, racism, and on and on. And then I guess the other one is I talked about the customizing the mental health assessments. People are working on this as we speak in terms of developing into some of these areas that before, that they never had to think about in their jobs before, especially in college with the NIL and transfer portal and these things coming along.
Yes, and that's one of the areas in my wheelhouse that I'm attaching myself to, is making sure that mental health assessments are appropriate for use with, the respective athletic population that we're choosing to work with. Another emerging trend here is mental health literacy for stakeholders. And when we say stakeholders, we're talking about decision makers, if that makes sense to you all. So coaches, administrators, but increasing the training for coaches, athletic trainers, administrators, just allowing them to have the skill set to recognize and respond to signs of mental health or any challenges that an athlete may be having. That's important. A lot of times, athletes are amongst their coaches and training staff, and they form, if I may, like a bond or a closer family type of a system. So with that, you want individuals around that have just a little bit more insight on what mental health looks like, what it may sound like, looking at behavior changes that their athletes may be having, so that way they can respond appropriately. Policies, we're looking at policies on sports betting and media exposure. So increase efforts to mitigate the impact of sports betting and excessive media scrutiny on athlete mental health, particularly at the youth athlete level, but it's happening. There's a lot of sports betting, there's a lot of gambling, and there's a lot of social media impacts, right? The worst thing you can do after a loss is probably go to social media because you won't find support there. But making sure that we are developing programs or psychoeducational programs focused on building relationships or resilience against gambling addiction, and then also any type of media related pressures. A lot of collegiate athletes, right? Their face is plastered over social media or on the news, ESPN, right? There's a lot of pressures there. So helping athletes to be able to deal with those. And then another significant emerging trend, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, and this will actually be like my next project, is referee mental health, right? This is something that often gets left off the table, but referees are athletes in their own respective regard. They have to referee games. They have to maintain their athleticism to be able to do that. And they too have their own mental health needs. And we're starting to see that there's a lot of pressures. And even at the youth level, we have referees that are unfortunately losing their lives due to conflicts and just different interactions amongst parents and spectators and youth athletic players. So these are things that we are starting to see within the field. If anyone's interested in it, right? That's just giving you some food for thought if that's something that you want to build your impact around. And then from a technology standpoint, so we are seeing a lot of technology being integrated into practice. And then, of course, like any space, there's a lot of technological innovations that are happening. One that I've saw is VR, virtual reality, is being implemented with some athletes, depending on what they're being treated for, right? But VR is entering into the space. So just be on the lookout for that. Technology is our friend when it's working and it's great, but when it is not, there's that too. So just be mindful of that. But there is some technology that's finding its way into our space. So that is the innovations in this space. Now, next up, we're going to talk about essentially what it means to work together, interdisciplinary connection. So what does that look like? What does that sound like? You never want to find yourself working in the field of social work and doing it alone. If you ever find yourself working somewhere and you're going at everything by yourself, that's not essentially how social work was designed. You want to have an interdisciplinary approach. My views, my purviews, my expertise in the field is definitely going to differ from maybe the athletic trainer or the coach's purview, even the psychologist or any other medical professionals, right? You want to be able to sit down with these individuals and collaborate amongst each other and be able to pull in everybody's purview to best build a treatment plan for your athlete. You don't ever want to sit down and try and do everything by yourself. Of course, your input is going to be your input, but you want to get purview, you want to get perspective from all these other helping professionals, right? And getting their input onto how to best support the athlete. Mr. Warren, do you have anything to share or add to that?
Yeah, I would add that in social work, it's we talk about starting where the client is, we talk about empowerment, and I think that there's no place that's more important to really emphasize that, and especially if you're working at the collegiate or the professional level of athletes, they're so regimented. They have so much coming at them where they don't necessarily have control over. In some ways, they're a vulnerable population. So I think in collaborating with all the members of the team, the collaboration with the student athlete to really hone your listening and be able to really engage them and use tools that empower them to invest in their own care, their own knowledge, and you're there as a guide.
Awesome. Yes, and that is very, very important. So we are going to, we're gonna try to get through this. We have until 4 o'clock, right, Dr. Mays? Okay, so we're almost there.
Yeah.
Let's try to get through this so then we can get to the questions. So career advice, definitely you want to leverage your transferable skills as we talked about. If you are looking to enter into this space, right, highlight your background and then be able to articulate how it transfers over, how you may have worked at a school, but you were able to, build a program and work with the athletes at the school, or maybe you were an athlete, right, and you can speak to your previous experience as being an athlete. Now, embracing your uniqueness, being able to articulate who you are and what you would bring to the field is very important. I always like to tell people, right, I didn't always work with athletes. I started out working with active duty soldiers, right? When you think about an active duty soldier, they are athletes in their own regard. I call them America's athletes, right? When they wake up in the morning at 5, 6 a.m., they're going to PT throughout the day. They are having to do whatever their job is. Sometimes in the evenings, they end with their unit PT, or they might have like unit yoga, or they might have their own, special unit activity. But nonetheless, when you think of an active duty soldier, right, I was able to show my background and leverage myself, my skills right into the sports social work field. Another key component is gaining exposure to sports environments. If that means showing up to community events where they are, showing, different services for youth athletes, if that means going to, what is it, the local high school games, whatever is going to place you in a sports environment or place you amongst individuals that are working in sport. That's probably where you want to spend some of your time. Come into the conference, come to the ASWIS conference that is happening in New Orleans, right? I don't know about you all, but I feel like New Orleans is a good time. So outside of coming to make connections, there's plenty of good food. So you'll be able to indulge in that And then also just believing in yourself. When I thought I discovered something and then I realized that there was a whole association behind it, I was like, I was a little bummed, but then I was like, okay, how can I navigate what's already here and create something that is sustainable and that, you know, I can be impactful in, right? And it worked out for me, but it was because I believed in it, right? I wasn't just gonna like half do it. If I was gonna do it, I was gonna do it right, and I was gonna do it with fidelity and make sure that I am entering into the space appropriately. And as Mr. Warren explained, right, there is an appropriate way to enter a community, making sure that you have the right tools and resources. And there are people out there that are willing to share it. I didn't get here just by myself, right? There were people that were sharing tools with me and resources with myself. So just be mindful of that. And then Mr. Warren, I'm just trying to get through this so we can get to the questions. So
Yeah,
forgive
good.
me. As you all see, there's different development options, right? So you can get your bachelor's in social work, you get your master's, your doctorate, or you can get a PhD. You can get the clinical license, you can get the master level license, you can get the CMPC, which is the Certified Mental Performance Consultant. You can get any trauma focused certifications, any sport specific credentials, right? All of these things are possibilities that could help you propel into the space. They're not concrete. You don't need them, but just depending on where you wish to operate in the space, it can be helpful. And then as far as career paths, we have many to choose from, right? You can enter into clinical roles, advocacy, case management, program development, administration, research, consultant. There's so much that you can potentially do within the space. And as far as choosing a career path, it would solely just be as far as what you want to do in the space. And if you have to carve out that for yourself and make that, then there's opportunity for that. But there are agencies, there are entities that are hiring social workers, sports social workers to come in and fill some of these roles for them. So you know, Indeed, you can go on Indeed and put in sport social work, or you can put in mental performance coach, you can put in community development. It just depends on the role, right? I've probably said that like 50 times, but it truly depends on the role in which you wish to operate in. Mr. Ron, do you have anything to add to that? I hope I covered it.
Well, I think I could. I guess I would underscore research roles. So if you're
Okay.
someone who really is interested in sports, and you are um, research focused, there's so much more research going on, including through the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports. If you join that group, there's a clinical group, there's a research group. So you know, again, and Dr. Cohn Young talked about this. There is a place for everyone in using sports as an intervention.
Yes, absolutely.
And
And it's truly, you know, I'll say one thing about social workers, when we get in somewhere, we take over. So we do it all in the sports space. I truly feel like we do a really good job, and the world is picking up on it. So if you're interested, I think, you know, now's a really good time to join in. And
Dr. Mays put student athletic development jobs in the chat.
there you go. And that's a really good search term. So take that. Let's see here. All right, we are at questions. So I am going to stop sharing. Is it okay if I stop sharing? Because I feel like I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Awesome. And then do we have any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
So while we're waiting for questions to pop up, in terms of athletic development jobs, I'm very in much in the community space right now, especially with COVID wiped out all kinds of opportunities for sports, and especially in underserved and under-resourced areas. and for athletes of color and youth. And those haven't really, they're coming back slowly, but there's a great space and opportunity for folks who want to be community minded, work with youth, and develop. If you're at a Parks and Rec program, or if you're in a school, there's a lot of room for that within the college athletic departments, within high schools, boys and girls clubs. If you want to work with your in policy at your local high school, statewide student athletic department there. So there are lots and lots. Here's a question. Transitioning out in your work, have you supported athletes who come from those backgrounds? If so, how do issues like attachment, belonging, identity show up in your work with them? And have you seen the side effects of adoption, foster reflection in your work?
So that's a good question. I'm actually working on some research right now. It's probably going to be a systematic literature review with one of my colleagues. He's really heavy into the child welfare space. So we are looking at of course, the impact of individuals within child welfare and their impact on sports play. But to answer your question just a little bit, when you have individuals that have trauma, or if they have attachment or belonging, right, you think about putting them into a system, right? And we want to look at sport as something that helps, right? But sometimes they don't have the ability to function in the sport, or they might not have the adequate reasoning to function in sport, right? But that's where like coaches come in and support staff and parents and all that, and helping them to be able to develop the skill set and being able to actually participate in sport and gain the benefit from it. Do they have issues? Absolutely. But is it something that we should say, well, then they shouldn't engage in the sport? No. What we're saying is, yes, they might experience, issues with following rules or sportsmanship, or being able to be a part of the team, but we never want to set the stage and say, well, we'll just exclude them, right? What we're trying to do is say, we want to have more responsible adults, right, that are volunteering their time to be coaches or to join in and, coach these youth, but understand that they may have some trouble with engaging in the sport. So we're seeing it. I hope I'm answering your question too. So we're seeing it, right? Another big push is for youth in foster care, right? Having them to engage in sport, making sure that the foster families have the resources to be able to engage in sport, because sometimes that can be a challenge too. That can be a barrier for them. And we want to utilize sport in a way to help. So we're seeing it. There are some concerns, but we don't want to take the kiddos away from sport. We want to utilize sport as a way to propel them forward.
And then we have, and I think that I would just add to that in adoption and foster care, what has their experience been like through that whole process and that whole system? And then, from there, if there's trauma in that, or whatever there is in that, you can find a way and a path for them to be with a good coach, and people, again, who understand how to work with individuals and customize approaches based on good assessments, so that you can work with that athlete and with a background of adult in adoption or foster care to get them on a path to success.
Yes, absolutely.
There's another one we have is seen as a common hurdle in engaging with athletes, but also coaches and families. Mental health is still extremely taboo in certain demographics, especially from a lens that can be more male or marginalized communities. Well, I would just right off the gate, yeah, it is. And so mental health is still a taboo. But what we do when we do it with coaches and we do it with our athletes is we use a strength-based approach. With that approach, you can see what are your strengths, what are the areas that you need to boost, and how do we make a plan? So we don't necessarily have to say, well, how is your mental health? And we don't have to focus it on that way. Coming in from a strengths-based approach around all of these issues can be one way to kind of mitigate that. And for coaches, look at the research. Do you want to win more games? Because a lot of the successful coaches have started to use in college a strength-based approach, and they're more like human beings than they are the X's and the O's. And the research shows that you can win more games when you use that kind of an approach. So you got to speak their language. Coaches like to win.
That is true. And a lot of coaches are, even if you don't think anything is wrong, right? They are setting the tone for their athletes and
Right.
saying, this is a part of being an athlete. This is what it means to
Right.
be an athlete. You have to take care of your mental health and your physical health. They're both important. So whether you go in there and you have a million things to talk about, or if you go in there and all is well, and you're meeting with, the sports performance clinician on staff, right? It doesn't matter, but there needs to be an opportunity for athletes to engage. And as long as the opportunity is there and these individuals are making themselves present, they're going in and engaging, right? Making sure that the athletes know who they are, where they can find them, especially when it comes to crisis, right? Sometimes athletes will find themselves in crisis a lot faster. They'll know the buildup, but because they're athletes, if I may, right? They might not, they might do a really good job at hiding it, or they might not want to address it, right? So with that, you have to be very mindful of when crises do arise for the athletes and being able to efficiently handle them, because that can be very important. But yes, to your point, when you look at males and when you look at, the marginalized communities, the data still does show, right, that these individuals are not more as apt to receive treatment, right? They're not as apt to go and seek out care. Now, if you bring it to them, right, you can mitigate that barrier. You can mitigate that that stigma, or you are helping to enhance the delivery of care because you're bringing it to them, so they have no reason. I always chuckled at the schools that are like, oh, we've been doing mental health for a long time. We have a mental health facility on campus, right? And you look at the hours of the facility, the mental health facility, and they're open from like 9 a.m. to like 2 p.m., right? My athletes are in school. They're in school, or they have practice, or they have weights, or they have a meet. Like, you're not impacting them because you're closed when they can actually come and see you. So that's something that we have to be mindful of too. Even if you are going to attach yourself to a university's mental health clinic, or if they have like a mental health organization that they attach themselves to, and you're going to be seeing athletes, be mindful of when you're offering services and times and things of that nature, because it's going to matter, especially if you're trying to impact this community of athletes, right? You want to make sure that they have adequate access to the care and know where you're at, and that way you can try and help them as far as coming to see you. So
the conference in New Orleans is if you go to the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports, or ASWIS, all the information about the conference, including now the registration, is open, and you'll find everything there that we're talking about, the articles, the field manual, tons of research articles, and the information about the conference.
Yes.
So the only thing I would add in closing is that we have, in our profession in clinical work, sometimes we start to tend to be too problem oriented. And I think that's where some of the stigma comes from around mental health, because there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your mental health. So when we turn that and we say, use a strength-based approach, we start to take a look at, what do you want to do better? What are your issues that are holding you back? and let's make a plan as to how you're going to be able to, how you're going to be able to address some of those things so that you can do better. We can get away from this thing of even the notion of the undercurrent of there's something wrong with you. It's not what it is. It's how do you want to do better?
Absolutely. One more. I see another question. Oh, I put the
Oh.
link in the chat too for the symposium. There's also, I am not going to be at this one. I just found out that I won't be at this one. There is a conference. It's the Black Student Unit, Black Student Athlete, gosh, I can't even talk. Black Student Athlete Mental Health. I think it's a symposium, but you can look up that one too. That actually may be a really good one. I think that one is tailored mostly to the athlete themselves, but I think they might do some teaching and they might offer some sessions to clinicians as well. So check that one out as well. And then this one says, I see the similarities with working with military service members and athletes. Like you mentioned, mental health stigma is still very prevalent in both groups. Can you please speak a bit more to that approach and how you use an empowerment approach to both? So both athletes, right, in their own regard, there's some differences with active duty. You're looking at ranking systems. You're looking at a totally different system in which they have to function as far as like MOS and being mission driven, right? So in that, you're trying to, I guess, you're trying to figure out what it is they're wanting to do, and if their actions are aligning with that. If that is, even if that's not staying in the Army sometimes, because that's the branch I specifically work with, I am trying to help them determine what it is they want to do. How can I help them be the best soldier that they can be? Even like Mr. Warren spoke about, if they want to, with an athlete, they want to, I'm basketball oriented. I always revert to basketball, so forgive me. But if they want to have, 10 points a game, they want to, have 2 steals and maybe 5 assists, right? How can I help you to get there? Are your actions aligning with that? Do we need to maybe look at your nutrition, right? Do we need to look at your grades? Are you eligible, right? Can you even step onto the court? Sometimes that's even the first step. But being able to empower them to want to do the work themselves, so that way we're not, we can't do it for them. I can't go score the 10 points for you. I can't go and, PR for you. I actually can't even do your MOS for you. I can't do the job for you, but how can I help you so that way you feel empowered and you have the tools to go out and accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And some of it is reducing stressors for them, right? If there's any stressors in life that may be impacting their ability to perform well. So that's definitely something that I look at as far as helping from a strengths-based or an empowerment approach. So that's my spiel. Mr. Warren, you got anything to add?
Well, just no, and not really. We could just keep going, but I think it's at 4 o'clock. So I just like to thank everybody for being present today and giving me the opportunity to talk and speak about sports social work. I did put my email in the chat, and please feel free to reach out. It looks like there might be one more.
That's me, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. We appreciate you all. One of the things that I kind of picked up, and just to kind of summarize, I guess, in my mind, case management is what I'm kind of hearing with sports social work. You are kind of dealing with the entire athlete, of course, but then that can involve not just mindset, not just performance, but then other resources outside of that that can support the mindset and the resources. I'm sorry, the performance of the student athlete. Is that along the same line? Is that kind of what I'm gathering?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, awesome. It looks like Ariane Tipton is speaking at the summit this year, so that's awesome.
Awesome.
So we thank you so much. No one in the classroom has any questions at this time. What I am gathering also is that sports social work, it has a lot of legs. And you said it several times, this is something that can be really expansive over time, and you can become niche oriented if you'd like. So we thank you for giving us insight, because I thought it was something completely different, to be honest with you. I did. And so thank you for giving us insight and taking your time to really dive into what it looks like from the day to day, which can vary. But yes, any other questions, any thoughts, feedback?
I would just like to congratulate everybody who's graduating.
Yes,
This
congratulations.
spring, whether it's from the BSW or the MSW,
Yes.
way to go.
Yes,
Find your way to the conference, find your way to sports social work, and we can talk further down in New Orleans.
absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. The students, I know the students that I have here in my class, you probably will be getting some friend requests, not friend requests, I'm sorry, connections on LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yes, so please, thank you so much for volunteering your time and being leaders in this field of social work.
absolutely. You all have a great rest of your day.
You as well, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.